Hey, garden nerds, we have a sponsor for this episode. It's the Heirloom Roses Company. Are you looking to create timeless beauty in your garden? It's always a great idea to add roses. At Heirloom Roses, they know that the best roses start with the best roots, which is why they only hand propagate own root roses. These own root roses will outlive and outshine grafted roses from the big box stores, resulting in stronger disease resistance, a longer lifespan, stunning blooms that are always true to variety. Located in Oregon, Heirloom Roses is a family-owned business that grows over 900 varieties of roses for gardening zones 3 through 10. Use their great search tool to narrow down your choice based on zone, fragrance, growth habit, color, and more. Plus, they have a 1-year guarantee, so if your roses don't thrive in this first year, they'll replace it for free. And as a special offer for our listeners, Heirloom Roses is offering 20% off all roses with code NERD20. That's NERD20. Use this code at checkout now through October 31st, 2024. And since they ship year round, you can choose the perfect ship date for your garden. It's time to experience growing roses the way nature intended on their own roots. So visit them at heirloomroses.com to find your next rose today and take 20% off with code NERD20. Now, on with the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Gardenerd Tip of the Week podcast, where experts from around the world talk shop, share stories, and offer their favorite tip. I'm your host, Christy Wilhelmy. This week, we're chatting with Kim Roman, a certified square foot gardening expert and military veteran who's gardened all over the world. She's also the author of the new book, Growing Herbs for Health, Wellness, Cooking, and Crafts, which includes 51 culinary herbs and spices, 25 recipes, and 18 crafts. Thanks for joining me, Kim.
Thank you so much, Christy. And I got to tell you up front, I've got a couple of your books, and I cannot wait to start implementing your strategies for mini fruits because, yeah,
Oh,
everything's
thank
about
you.
small.
Yeah, it's true. And when we're limited to a small space, you have to come up with all kinds of techniques to work around it, which is your work too. That's what you're doing with square foot gardening, right?
Absolutely.
So you're a self-proclaimed military brat. You've traveled a lot. How did gardening factor into your life along the way?
Well, first, I'm going to describe a little bit about where I've lived in the world.
Okay.
So, I turned 65 this past November, and I have not lived in a place more than a couple of years.
Wow.
I was born at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. 6 weeks later, my family moved to Oklahoma City, then back to Wichita Falls, Texas. My dad retired from the military, but we continued to move from Escondido, California to Glens Falls, New York to Nevada. Even in Nevada, we moved from Las Vegas to Henderson to Boulder City. So low desert to high desert.
All the things.
Yeah, back to upstate New York. And when I graduated high school at 17, we moved back to Nevada. My mom and I moved back to Nevada. And as soon as I turned 18, I went into the military and started to travel.
Wow.
So I met my husband at a tiny air station when we were both stationed in southern Italy. And then we went back to Texas for 13 months and then back to Italy. And then we went to Nebraska and finally Maryland. And
Wow. God, everywhere. All the hardiness
everywhere. There's a
zones.
Johnny Cash song that's called "I've Been Everywhere," yeah, and I really feel like that. So let's kind of start my journey in Maryland at Fort Meade. We were living on the military installation at that time, and I was a volunteer mayor.
Okay.
And that is the liaison between the command staff and the housing residents.
Hmm.
So another mayor and I approached the commander and we said, "Hey, can we start a community garden?" And the commander said, "Yeah, that sounds really great." So we did all the things, and that's where I learned about square foot gardening.
Okay.
And if you're not familiar with that, it was developed by Mel Bartholomew back. The original method came out in 1976, when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I was graduating high school.
I always say that it was back when he had a PBS series and a comb over. And
Yeah.
then
Absolutely. So you're familiar with Mel, and he was such a wonderful and giving person. But it is, and square foot gardening is a great method for community gardens because it's small space. Everything is jam packed in there, and it's a raised bed method, so
Right.
it's perfect for small spaces.
Yeah. And so, what did you discover in this community garden process you were doing?
Oh, everything went absolutely spectacular. Everything was growing. We were all learning and having a great time until someone discovered unexploded ordnance. So, being the military people we just backed slowly away
Hmm.
and were never allowed to go back there again. So,
Oh, that's so
well, but
sad.
it's better than the alternative where I could have ended my gardening career with a bang.
Right. Yeah. And missing legs or whatever it is that
Whatever.
happens. Yeah. Gosh. Well, that's good that you saw it ahead of time and before digging a new trench or something. Right.
Yeah. Well, and that was the beauty of the square foot garden because it was a raised bed on top of the soil, so we didn't dig.
So smart. So smart. See, more than one reason to have a raised bed garden, everyone.
Amen.
So you're more settled now, I imagine, although your life has been never too much of settling. What does your garden look like at this point? Where are you gardening now?
Well, now I am gardening in northeast and part of Maryland, and the town actually is called North Space East.
Okay.
And we're 20 minutes from Delaware and 20 minutes from Pennsylvania. But in between that time, we had two tours over to Germany. And yeah, that's kind of where I really learned to garden. Again, a whole different, way different from Nevada. Um, so 40 years we were just kind of vagabonds and, kind of threw our hats in wherever, or lifted a trowel wherever we were.
That's
Um,
good. Yeah.
yes. So when we were living in just south of Baltimore, I really thought that was the last the time I was moving because my husband had retired and, so why are we going to move? At that time, we were on about 1/5 of an acre
Oh,
in a small, yeah, in a small Cape Cod house. And it was just, perfect, nice and sunny. And I had taken the home study course to become a certified instructor with square foot gardening in Berlin, Germany. But when we came back, I found out that Mel was teaching a live class, a whole weekend seminar in Eden, Utah. So of course I went and learned more about gardening there. Now, I love the philosophy of the foundation, and that is to end world hunger 1 square foot at a time.
yeah.
And Mel encouraged us to go out and teach others about that. So yeah, I've taught, in several places here in Maryland, in the surrounding area, and I even had the fortune of going to Kenya to teach composting.
Really?
Yeah, my church just happened to be going on a missions trip, and we always did a building project. Well, this year the building project was a greenhouse.
Oh, cool.
So I'm like, okay, I'm there.
Nice.
And then when they found out I was an instructor, they asked me to teach, and it was just I learned more than I taught, though.
That sounds really exciting. You've really done a lot.
Yeah, in just 65 short years.
65 short years. And where's that in like hardiness zone wise, and how much room do you have to
Ah,
work with?
well, because of the change in the USDA hardiness zone map, the end of last
Recently?
year,
Yep.
I went from 7A to back to 7B, which I was in, in the Baltimore area.
Okay. So not that much of a change in terms of what you can grow.
Correct.
Nice.
The one thing I was missing in my other garden, my really tiny property, was a medicinal garden. I always wanted a medicinal herb garden. A couple of years ago, my daughter-in-law said, "Hey, did you want to buy a house together with us?" My son, youngest son, daughter-in-law, 3 grandkids. And I'm like going, sure, that'd be great. My husband and I thought it was really good. The second property we looked at was just a fabulous house with an in-law apartment already in it.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, and I'm sitting there going, it's almost an acre and a quarter. Almost an acre and a quarter. I can have a medicinal herb garden. Yeah, but the city girl didn't realize that the only sunny area was in the front yard. No problem. We didn't have an HOA, so I didn't have to worry about that. The only sunny spot is over the septic field. I did not know what that meant.
Oh no,
That
that's
means
such
no
a bummer.
in-ground garden.
Yeah. Yeah. So what'd you
So
do?
I just went back to square foot gardening. And
Excellent.
so right now, at this moment, I've got two 4 foot by 8 foot raised beds out front in the front yard. On the side, which faces south, I have another 4 foot by 8 foot raised bed. And that's more for trialing flowers.
Okay.
And I am in the process. I just opened the box yesterday. I'm going to put another 4 foot by 8 foot out in that front yard. And I just constructed a 6 by 8 greenhouse.
Oh, fun. So are you doing seed starting in there? Or are you growing things that are out of your zone?
I am, well, it's kind of a mix. Right now, I am preparing seeds because I'm going to be participating in a garden market at a local church. And so I want to sell some transplants.
Oh, cool.
Now, there is another shed in the back, and when we constructed it with the same material, double walled, what's it called? Not polycarbonate.
Okay. For like
And we put
greenhouse
that on
material.
the roof so that brings a lot of sunshine into that shed. And I will be storing fruit trees and stuff like that. The mini fruit trees, I'll be
Oh,
schlepping them in
fantastic.
there.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's great. This is sort of a random question. I want to mention the fact because people may not know this. You've told us your age, which is makes this even more interesting and fascinating to me. You have a thriving TikTok following, over 100,000 followers, and that is not something you usually find with
It,
someone of the
of
older
gray hair.
generation, right?
Yeah.
Of our generation and above. And so, how did you accomplish this in a world where predominantly teenagers are using the
Yeah.
platform?
Well, we are taking over. We are taking over
Yeah.
the world. But it was so funny because a couple years ago, my daughter-in-law said, "Oh, you need to go be on TikTok." And I'm like, "I don't sing, I don't dance, I don't eat, Tide Pods. What am I going to do on TikTok?" You know. So so anyway, my first two videos were horrible. I was
Oh.
showing people how to transplant or up pot tomato plants. And this is how you do this. That's how you do that. And boring. And then I'm sitting there going, oh, this just isn't working. I don't understand this. And, I guess I studied a little bit more. It's not just singing and dancing. So I studied some other garden accounts, and I'm sitting there going, you know what? The name of my business is Square Foot Gardening for You. Let's teach about square foot gardening. And Mel, speaking of his PBS show,
Hmm.
it started with a minute with Mel.
Oh, really?
And
I
I'm like,
didn't know
and
that.
back then you were limited to 1 minute.
Okay.
And so I'm like, if Mel can do it, I can do it. So I, just like put on my Mel coat and did my comb over and the hat.
Uh-huh.
And no, I just decided to do 1 minute. My daughter-in-law, granddaughter, and I went out to dinner. And I got my phone in my hand and I am looking at the TikTok and I'm going, that can't be right. And so every time I refreshed, it was going up first by tens and then by hundreds and then by thousands.
That's so
I hit a
crazy.
dead spot. And for the 20 minutes that we were driving, I went up by, like 10,000.
Amazing.
And the next morning, I went from like 0 followers to 80,000.
Incredible. That is
And it
incredible.
and the only thing I'm going to say is truly blessed to be able to use the square foot gardening name, because that is one of the highest hashtags
Yeah,
in gardening. Is
it's
everybody
very
wanted to know about
popular.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that is the only that is the only reason I have that big of a following.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I know, so just for the sake of current events, I we are recording this in March of 2024, and I think there is a bill in Congress right now
Mm.
to
Mhm.
possibly ban TikTok from the United States, depending on whether they're trying to force a sale. So we don't know how that's going to play out as of this recording.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes. But I hope your followers follow you to wherever you need to go if something happens
Yeah.
and all of that. So just
I'm
want
not, I don't think it'll happen necessarily. I'm hoping it doesn't happen. I am not part of the creator account, so I'm not earning money
to, okay.
from
Yeah.
TikTok. So
You're just,
that does not affect me. But yes, I already am looking
yeah,
for other
other options.
venues. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. All right. Well, let's dive into your new book. Let me do that again. Let's dive into your new book, Growing Herbs for Health, Wellness, Cooking, and Crafts. So it's covering a lot. You share the basics of how to grow herbs and how to use them in our lives in all different ways. What are some of your favorite herbs to grow? For example, if someone doesn't have a lot of room to grow.
Well, first off, I would ask everybody to realize I am not a doctor. I don't claim to be. I don't play one on TikTok. I am not in the medical field. I'm not even an herbalist. But there is a 2019 article that I just read right before I wrote the book, and it was from PubMed, and it was called Health Benefits of Culinary Herbs and Spices. And that's when it just, that light bulb went, or the aha moment. That's when I realized I didn't need that medicinal garden. I was already growing culinary herbs and spices. Almost every gardener, vegetable gardener, food gardener, is growing herbs of some sort. So I ask people, in order to figure out what to grow, figure out what chronic illnesses you have or things you want to correct or support with the culinary herbs and spices, and grow those. And then anything else you want to do. But for me, like I'm of Italian descent. I love my Mediterranean herbs. In the book, I do have herbs listed by, country or area. I
Mhm.
have the Afro-Caribbean, I've got Asian, Indian, and Mediterranean and others. So if you like to cook with a certain ethnic flair, I would suggest you grow the herbs for that. And on my recipes, I don't really do recipes, a lot of recipes. I show you how to make a basic vinaigrette
Mhm.
or a marinade, and then you put those French herbs and spices in, or you put those Italian herbs and spices in to go with what you want.
That's great. It's I loved those charts that you did in the book that break things down by culinary what do I want to say? I don't want to say well, there's just those different profiles that you're
Herbs of
trying
the
to,
world.
yeah, herbs of the
Yeah.
world. Exactly. It's great. Now you also explore some unusual herbs, and I wanted to pull out one in particular, chicory. I've never grown it. I don't know how to grow. What do I need to, what do I need to know and how can I use it?
So the first thing you need to realize is that you're going to see some weird things called chicory here in America.
Yeah.
And I asked my husband, asked my husband to get me a purple cabbage. And I said, as small as possible. He comes home with radicchio.
Oh, uh-huh.
And it was also listed as chicory.
Yeah, it is. Well, they're because they're
Yeah.
aren't they all in the
And
same family? Like endive
yes,
and yeah,
yeah, I was just
all in
going to
the same
say endive or endive,
endive, depending on
I
where
call it
you.
endive.
Yeah. Hmm.
A lot of things are called chicory. So the chicory in the book is the root vegetable, or I guess it looks like a parsnip, and you sort of grow it that way because it is a root vegetable. It likes loose, sandy soil, but it likes rich soil. So sandy soil with a bunch of compost is the best way to grow it. And then, you just keep peeking in there to see if it's a good size. And once it is, you can use it as like a coffee substitute that doesn't have caffeine in it. And you'll see in the stores in the tea aisle that it's listed as a chicory tea. And that's really good. Sometimes you'll even find really great blends of coffee grounds, ground coffee, and ground chicory.
Okay.
And that kind of mellows out that bitterness of the chicory.
So do you dry it and grind it up, or how do you use it
Yes.
fresh? I've
You dry it and then grind it. And kind of a coarse, I like a coarse grind because I use a French press most of the time and I don't want a bunch of stuff at the bottom.
Yeah, the sediment must be
Yeah.
just not fun.
Yeah.
Imagine. Well, that is something I have to put on my list because my husband has done the chicory tea thing, and I'm like, oh, I've never thought to grow it and do that whole thing, which is, we do that for peppers, right? We dry them and make our
Mhm.
own chili powder, whatever. So
Yep.
yeah, very cool. There's something else you mentioned that I've never heard before, an infusion machine. And I suppose that's because I'm not in the world of cannabis. But what is this device? Tell me more.
And it's not just for cannabis.
Right, exactly.
But that is the main selling feature of it. A lot of them make sure that you're not having that horrible smell in your house. So they take care of that. But oil infusions, let me just go through a couple. There
Yes.
are three main ways of making oil infusions. One is a cold infusion, and you're always going to start out with dried herbs to make an oil infusion. If you're going to use it for wellness purposes, it's best to do it slow in a cold environment or cool environment, not heated, because you lose a little bit of the volatile oils when you heat up the oil. So that's cold infusion, but it takes the longest. It takes 2 to 3 weeks in order to get it to where you need it to be.
Yeah, and can we talk about botulism for a second? Because I have totally done that. I have
Yeah.
put herbs, rosemary in a in a vat of oil, and I've grown mold on it inside the oil and had to throw it away. So tell me about that.
Right. So that is probably because the rosemary was not dry enough. Okay. That's why I said you're going to use your dried herbs. And it drives me nuts to go into a store, a gourmet shop, and they've got a fresh sprig of rosemary
Right?
in the oil or vinegar. Like,
What are
why?
you
You're
doing?
trying to
Yeah.
kill your
No, exactly.
customers. So it has to be super, super dry.
Yeah.
And the second way of doing it is a warm oil infusion, which is you take a pot on the stove. Now, here you go. When you're doing it cold infusion, you're lightly packing in your dried herbs, and then you're pouring oil over it till it's about an inch over the top of that. And you make sure to put some kind of a weight on top of it to make sure that it
Ah,
stays underneath it. Or
smart.
the dried herbs tend to soak up the oil and pop to the top. So you would make sure, keep an eye on it. You're going to be shaking it every day. So if you see it starting to poke out, add more oil so that it's completely covered. Now, that warm infusion, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to put it into a mason jar. You're going to put your herbs in there. You're going to put your oil in there. So that means you're going to have the right proportion. Then you're going to dump it into the pan and start gently heating it very slowly for a couple of hours. You'll have to do a search because different herbs depend on different length of time in order to infuse. The infusion machine, chef's kiss. I'm talking, I never thought, I don't like gizmos and gadgets.
Yeah, and certainly one-use tools are not in my wheelhouse either. I like something to be multi-purpose, stacking functions, but this one made me want to do something different.
Yes. And okay, full disclosure, I contacted Levo, which is the brand I use, and I said, I did not have one at the time. I said, can I just ask you some question about infusion machines? Let us send you one
Oh my
and you
God.
try it out. Okay.
Fantastic. Don't twist my arm, right?
Twist my arm, make
Yeah.
me do it.
Wow.
And, of course, they did try to make me do the affiliate program.
Okay.
Okay. And initially I told them, yeah, I'd go ahead and do that. But then they wanted TikTok videos. And I said, nope,
No. Yeah. Okay.
no, that's just not my vibe. So anyway, um, this machine, again, we say you're going to use dried herbs. This machine will run a cycle to dry the herbs and then it infuses the oil. And it's like,
Oh,
set it and forget it. You push the
nice.
button on whether or not you need to dry the herb, or if you're using dried herbs, you just put it in a basket and then you fill it with the oil. And again, they have a cheat sheet, and it's like if you're going to use rosemary and olive oil, this is how long you need to do it, and this is the temperature that you set it at, and you walk away from it. And it's just amazing. Now, if we can talk a little bit about oils, are you
Yes.
going to use it for eating or are you going to use it for cosmetic? Um, can I plug a company,
Yeah,
an herb
sure.
company? Okay,
Yeah, sure.
mountainroseherbs.com has really great charts, and they'll tell you what oils are edible and they'll tell you what oils are cosmetic. And I love it because even on the cosmetic one, if you have oily skin, you're going to use a different oil than if you've got dry skin. So, find the info from the experts.
That's a great resource. I will put a link to that in the chat notes for this podcast. There are a number of recipes in the book as well, including one for something you call frosé. Can you share this delightful idea with our listeners? This one took me by storm.
It is absolutely wonderful. It's not my invention. Frosé is, a bit of word play, a portmanteau, and it's a combination of the word frozen and rosé. And of course, the rosé is not a red wine, it's not a white wine, it is a rosé, or it's also called blush
Mm-hmm.
wine. And really, you're going to take a nice rosé and make sure it's well chilled. The if you get a dry variety, then it's going to bring out that crispness of, fruit and herb. And a fruity wine is also nice too. I'm a fruity wine person.
Mm-hmm.
You would take about a half a bottle and well chilled, and you would take the easiest thing to do is use frozen fruit.
Yes.
So use a frozen fruit, about a cup and a half of frozen fruit to that half bottle of wine. You're going to have to play with, you're going to have to play with it to get the exact amount that you want. And of course, this time you're going to use fresh herbs. And I would start out with about an eighth of a cup, 2 tablespoons, an eighth of a cup. Add more. You can't take the herbs out of it,
Right.
but you can
Yeah.
add more to it. So that's always good. And let me give you a couple of, pairings that I find that I love. And that would be strawberries and basil,
Ooh, yes.
peaches and thyme,
Mm-hmm.
and blueberries and tarragon.
Really? I
Yeah.
wouldn't have thought about that. That's interesting.
Who would know?
Who
So
knew?
those are really good. So what you're going to do is you're going to put the rosé and the frozen fruit into a blender and mix it and the herbs and mix it till it's nice and smooth. And especially if it's a berry that has seeds, you're going to want to strain it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to, you could even use that frosé to make ice cubes.
Yes.
and throw it into just regular rosé if you don't like the slushiness.
I was
I
going
don't
to
know
say
who
this
wouldn't.
this sounds like a sangria slushy, which sounds right up my alley.
Yeah. And if you use the frosé as ice cubes, then you're not diluting your wine.
Yeah, that's true. Very good idea. These are such great ideas. Wow. There's so much in this book that I think people would enjoy. It is tip time. Do you have a favorite tip that you'd like to share with the Garden Nerd audience? And it can be from your book or not.
It's not gonna be for my book, believe it or not, but since I started out with how much I moved,
Hmm.
then I think my tip is going to be, if you know you're going to move, you're gonna start looking at the growing conditions in the area that you're moving to. Like if you're moving from upstate New York to southern Florida, you know, you're basically going to have to, going to be able to grow something year round, but you'll just need to find out when you'll be able to do it. For instance, in upstate New York, you'd put your tomato transplants out in mid-May. And if you're in southern Florida, wow, you're going to have to start your seeds like in August and you're going to have a harvest in March. And, same difference if you're going to move from Georgia to Minnesota. You're going to become familiar with this wonderful phrase called short season crops
Yeah,
because you've only got 145 days to grow in Minnesota, where you would have 300 plus days down south.
right.
So my tip is you take advantage of your local cooperative extension service. They will tell you what you can plant. They will tell you the varieties you can plant and when to plant them for your area.
That's really good advice because I know I get that question all the time. Like, how do I know when to blah, 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 blah? And it's like, check with your local ag department at your university or the extensions, the
Yeah.
cooperative extensions. That's perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for that expert tip and for being on the Garden Nerd Tip of the Week podcast. Where can people find you online?
Okay. Well, on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, you can do at Square Foot Gardening for You. And that's the number 4 and the letter U, Square Foot Gardening for You. If you want to know about indoor food gardening, Facebook and Instagram would be at Your Indoor Food Garden. And for herbs, I'm on Facebook at Culinary Herbs for Wellness. And that's the FOR, not the number. Culinary Herbs for Wellness.
Do you have a website?
Yes, I do. It's sfg4u.com. SFG, like in square foot gardening, the number 4, the letter U.com.
Perfect. All right, garden nerds, you'll find links to Kim's new book this week at gardenerd.com. We'll also link to her website, her on demand classes, and her TikTok channel so you can join her and the other throngs of people who follow her. That's it for this week. Subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Visit us for tons of free gardening information at gardenerd.com. Special thanks to our sponsor, Heirloom Roses, for supporting this episode. You'll find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter under Garden Nerd 1, on Facebook as gardenerd.com, and of course, our Garden Nerd YouTube channel. Happy gardening!